So, we've made it to session number 4. Just give me a heads up if you're really struggling with some of this for now. Anyway, moving forward, I guess if we go back to where we were right at the start, we've been through background, policy statement, the key abbreviations. What we really want to talk about right now is this current fishery position and the controls that are set in place for the fishery itself. Now, you probably guessed where I pull my information from. If I go back to my policy that I've established, which you, like I say, you should have a copy of it, and it's only an example, I don't want you to copy it. You should by now have an understanding of what some of this information here is. This is an MSY chart, and I've actually got 2 types of methods of catching fish in this fishery. This one here is the long line fishery, which comes across to the right side, and the blue one is the left axis, indicating where the sustainable yield is for those fisheries. And if you look at the charts themselves, compare the MSY with the potential MEY down here. This is the MEY I calculated off the data right through there. You'll see that they're almost exactly the same, which is, you know, it's neither here nor there really. But really, to achieve full sustainability, I shouldn't say full sustainability, this fishery is sustainable where it is right now, but you'll see that probably can't really see it on my chart here right now, you'll see that the economic break-even point is quite low on this fishery, which means that we're pushing the limits uphill. It's a high value fish. It's not really costing us that much to administer the process in comparison to what the value of the fishery is worth. But if we're running down here, it's only something, you know, a bad weather event, a year of global warming that's, you know, maybe impacted on the recruitment of the stock, knowing that these southern bluefin tuna spawn in the tropics, up around here where we are in Broome, offshore a long way, up across the Christmas Island, so on and so forth, where ocean acidification is a big problem, it's becoming a bigger problem. Who's to say that the impact on that fishery might be the tipping point for here, and we end up running this course of the line through there, which is pretty much economic break-even points that collapse. That's pretty complex to get to there, but that's really, you know, ideally we should be, you know, fishing up there somewhere where our economic break-even point sets our MEY through here somewhere. If that makes any sense whatsoever. If not, give me, like I say, give me a tingle if that doesn't really make any sense. So I'm just going to scrub all that out. I created these charts back in Microsoft Excel, so hopefully by now you guys would have run these scenarios because they're back earlier in Blackboard, where we pit, you know, the yield against the effort to create our CPUE over here. Alright, and then we implement the costs and the effort costs, sorry, the value attached to the sales, the effort costs, which some people by now would have found out that it's not very easy to access that information, to spit us out these A and B functions to enable us to run a theoretical parabolic yield model, or what we call MSY. So we can see from this data really, if I scroll across, we can see that this is the seine net fishery. We can see there's this massive correlation between catch and effort over time, which gives us a really strong representation saying that that data is really reliable. The dots are really close to the line. It's suggesting that these guys fish really efficiently, and the seasonal fluctuations over time are impacting the way that the catches occur. So these guys use things like spotter planes, helicopters and drones and things like that to track these schools, so they're not wasting their time in finding the fish. Whereas these guys over here, when we're talking about the southern bluefin tuna, this is the longline fishery where we know the catches of southern bluefin tuna are incidental, they're not targeted. This data is a little bit more sporadic. It doesn't really fit the curve very well at all, and that's because they're taking into account all the other types of fish that are occupying the hook, so to speak. So not all the hooks on that long line have been occupied by the southern bluefin tuna. So it might be 1 in 10 fish that comes up to the southern bluefin tuna, but the effort is calculated the same, if that makes sense. Not the effort for that one hook for that tuna. So I've taken the information from this data set, alright, And I'm happy to give you this data set, and I might omit some of the charts so that you can create them yourself. And then I've actually just drawn on, by now obviously you would have understood that you need to draw on those MSY, MEY lines. And then I've just given them a colour code so that when I come across to putting them in my document, it's a little bit easier to understand that the green text goes with the green line. And in this situation, the green line represents the change in quota and where it sits in terms of the value within the fishery. So when I modelled it out, I ran it around about, I think it was like 824. This was just off the same sector, by the way. I didn't do it for both. Because it's just an example, but if we were doing this for real, we'd have to do both of them and combine it all together somehow and spit out the information. But I've just done the example for the seine sector. So really that would be 824 shots for those fish. So a shot is just the time that the net is deployed. So 824 shots to achieve, I think that was roughly around about $42 million based on the values that I could find. And then I've gone, righto, I want to reduce that quota by 10%, which was sort of taken off up here where we take, this model here for blue was around about 5,000. Let's reduce that by 10%. Come across to here, where's 5,000? Roughly there. Bring it down to 10%, so it's somewhere between 500 and 600 shots. And come down to here, set it at, I think that 600 line there. Come across, and then we find out that we're sitting around about the $37 million, which is around about where, consequently, this is the model that I set up, and it's probably just coincidence that the fishery for 2015-2016 was around about $37.5 million. Even though I'm saying reduce the quota, they're saying the fishery was worth that anyway at the limit that was predicted. And then I've come across and I've changed my target reference point to 4,400. Left the limit reference point as 3,000 tonnes, and then run out the data that I could find across the years in terms of the tonnes that were taken to get the history, which is what this chart is over here. And that's been taken out and copied and pasted into the document itself, showing a target reference point of 4,400, the limit reference point of 3,000 tonnes. The blue curve is the historical catch, and in between all this stuff here, that there is the box or the cube, I guess you might say, of flexibility that we have. So we won't necessarily make a decision on changing something unless we start to hover around, there. We might need to decrease the quota again, or if we're hovering around here, and like I said in the last session, if our CPUE is increasing and we're hovering around here, we're not maximising our economic return, so we may need to increase our quota further. So from there, I just take this data across to my policy, and I've pretty much just cut and pasted in. No, that's policy statement. Let's go across one more. That's key abbreviations. We've already discussed that. So the current fishery position, I'm referring to the charts, right? Direct references to the charts. So what we want to have is visual depictions of things if we can, direct reference to them, so that people aren't thinking about it. Sometimes it's better to say, here's a picture, and then comment on that picture itself. There's numbers of ways we can do that, but try and keep it simple. And obviously we want to have clear statement of controls in there. And all I did with that one there was to go across to the AFMA website again, have a look at how the fishery was managed, its rules, its regulations, and really when you look through them, the only control that this one has is a TACC, or a total allowable commercial catch. So what I want you to do is go across, have a look at the data from the AFMA website again, SBT, sorry. Have a look at the information that's in there. Have a look at the current fishery position. Where is it currently standing? Try and think about the CCS SBT stuff external to Australia, because we're really talking about Australian policy here. But you might comment that these things are being done outside of our control, which is going to potentially impact on the sustainability within inside our fishery. So that's one thing that we suffer as a global fishery, but managing it within inside a Commonwealth arrangement, is that once the fish swim out, if we don't catch it, someone else can catch it. So do we want to be maximising our returns rather than another country maximising their returns? So it's a little bit like the tragedy of the commons. If someone does it, I'm going to do it as well. And that's really where we get back to the conundrum of fisheries management. If I don't do it here, someone else is going to do it over there, and they're going to make the money and they're going to win. So, and that's probably why the levels of the southern bluefin tuna have been depleted so badly over time, because the agreements were never in place. Countries just did things unethically, just went in there and boom, let's just fish everything because we can. And then all of a sudden, southern bluefin tuna dropped off the radar for a long time. So, hence the need for policy, hence the need for collaborative arrangements with stakeholders, so on and so forth. And for now, what I want you to do again is to go off, consult me for the data set if you're struggling to download it. I'll get it to you via an email or something, so that you can copy and paste your charts and put them in, and access the information yet again to go through and develop your fisheries position and the control mechanisms within that situation. So I'll leave it there for now, and in the next session we'll talk about, see if we can squeeze off a few more. We'll go through stakeholder engagement, and probably we'll see if we can get on to reporting and monitoring and so on and so forth. Alright, I'll let you go for now.